to today's demo webinar, How to Secure Agentic Development from Agent Visibility to Autonomous Remediation. I'm Devin McGuire, Product Marketing Manager at SciCode, and I'm joined by Jeff Cron, Strategic Advisor and Consultant for Security. Jeff, great to have you with us.
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's going to be fun.
So when I think about the changes in development and application risk over the past few years and the rise of agentic development, there are a few topics that the conversation consistently revolves around. There's the increased velocity, there's more code being generated by not only more people, but also these new entities and agents. There's also the intensifying threat landscape. AI not only generates more code and more vulnerabilities, but it also detects and exploits those faster than ever. And there's also kind of these new attack surfaces, new AI-specific risks to manage and technologies to govern. So we're going to spend some time soon exploring how SciCode thinks about that from a product perspective, how security teams can manage these multifaceted risks. But first, want to level set with you on the practitioner experience and perspective on what's different and maybe what isn't about securing agentic development. So, from where you sit, what has actually changed in the last few years?
It's amazing, right? We're just seeing the massive increase that AI is having on everything within the application development space, right? So the business world is insatiable when it comes to the speed of development, right? They always want things done faster, faster, faster. And now they're starting to worry about not just how much is being created, but who or what is created, right? So when we look at the development landscape, you have carbon-based life forms, people developing code and contributing to your applications, and you have silicon-based life forms that now we've released agents upon the world, right? So I think there's going to be the demand for speed will always be there, but what's shifted now is the risk appetite is growing, pushing more agent development, chasing perceived savings, right? And the fascinating part is you're not just developing code, you're making decisions on how your business applications serve your customers and meet the requirements. And the fact that we're handing the keys over to agents for that space is pretty fascinating.
Yeah. So the insatiable appetite for speed, I guess that's not new, but it is interesting. You're seeing the risk appetite change, and I guess how is that calculus changing? Are teams adapting? What they tolerate? Yeah. How is
Yeah.
that? How do you see that playing out?
Oh, absolutely. I think the risk tolerance is going way up for not poor code is the wrong choice, right? But a different type of code being released. It's more verbose. It's creating more vulnerabilities to fix vulnerabilities, and the speed and savings that people hope to gain from that process is being tolerated, right? So I think the rate at which code being developed by agents is increasing, in the amount of risk people are willing to accept in putting that code to the public facing systems is higher.
Yeah, for sure. How about this idea of AI exploits and attacks? Are you seeing that play out? Is it kind of theoretical and people are preparing for it? What's your opinion?
Yeah. This one's fascinating and it's going to change, right? I think what everyone needs
Hmm.
to keep in mind is as quickly as the AI landscape has changed in the last 6 months, so the same landscape is going to change in the threat space as well. So by lowering the barrier to entry with AI, you have more poor attackers getting into the space, creating poorly orchestrated attacks with AI. So that number of attacks is gone up dramatically, and it's almost an
Hmm.
inadvertent DDoS, right? They're not really good attacks because the people doing it just don't know what they're doing. They're just throwing a ton at it. The thing to keep in mind is agentic systems learn very quickly, and they're
Hmm.
going to help these poor attackers get better very quickly. So I think the fidelity and the accuracy of attacks going forward is going to increase dramatically. And we've already seen frontier models being able to daisy chain other vulnerabilities together to create new exploits that hadn't been there before. So I think it's going to be a hockey stick curve of a whole bunch of poorly orchestrated attacks to very, very well
Hmm.
orchestrated attacks.
All right. Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, I mean, obviously AI improves at an incredible rate, and the cyber offensive capabilities will improve as well. I think when one of the things we hear is there's this kind of cumulative strain of AI. It's aggravating the old legacy code problems. You know, I think it was already a bent system of how do we keep up with development. Now it's just even more bent. It's been bending for a long time, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
but like there's and you mentioned, you know, that insatiable appetite for speed, and you know, it's not just cyber risk isn't the only thing the business needs to worry about. And so how do we as security teams enable the business to innovate and do so in a secure manner? And then it is kind of what are the tactics involved in securing these new agentic development lifecycle, these new areas of risk. And I don't know, to me, a lot of it is still like the fundamentals are consistent. Like you still need visibility into things. You need to prioritize and remediate. Ideally, you're also preventing, but maybe what's changing is just this yet another layer of to the attack surface that you need to secure. So
Yeah.
we're gonna jump into the product soon, but just like thinking about those fundamentals and starting with you know visibility. When you go into organizations today, like how much visibility do they typically have into their agentic development and their AI agents and what they're committing, what they're doing?
It's really low. I think
Yeah.
it's what's scaring all security leaders and even IT leaders in this space. The application developer leaders need to know who and what's creating the code. And we need to remind them, right, from a business perspective, aligning with the business and from a security angle, seatbelts let you go faster, right? That's the point of security. We are trying to enable the business to go as fast as possible. When you put your seatbelt on, you can drive faster safely, right? That's the analogy I'm using when we're trying to make sure people understand that by leaning into this, the business is going to go faster and perform more effectively. But it all starts with visibility grounded in proper inventory and asset management processes. And that's where we really need to lean on partners and vendors to improve the way we're doing it because the inventory asset management and detection methods that we had before simply didn't account for agentic workflows, agentic workers, autonomous workers, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it. And as you said, you're adding another layer. So when you're looking at that full stack of risk, the application, the infrastructure it sits on, the developers and their endpoints, you now have to add yet another layer to that stack of risk that you really need to account for and understand which controls you're applying to it.
Yeah, 100%. So actually I like the seatbelts let you go faster analogy. So I'm gonna share start sharing my screen. And I guess to keep with that analogy, I think you know Psycode thinks of it as like the 4-point harness, I guess, for agentic development. And you know, this is in addition to, as you mentioned, like there are um, you know, your traditional areas of software supply chain security and code risk, and this is, you know, adding another layer to that. And when we think about agentic development, security, and visibility into that, we frame it around these kind of four areas of visibility into the inventory. So what AI tools and technologies are in the ecosystem, what's influencing the code that's being generated, and the applications that are going into production. There's governance. So how do you not just have visibility into those technologies, but actually have controls to say, okay, these are approved, these are not approved. This is, you know, shadow AI that we need to make a decision about. So good that we have visibility into that. Now let's take some action upon that. Then there's how developers and non-developers interact with these tools. So how do we have guardrails so that they're not doing risky things while they're engaged with, you know, putting secrets in prompts, for example? Can we block that behavior? Can we report on it? And then there are these AI specific risk categories. And so how do we manage this new category of risk in a prioritized way? And at the core of this is looking at AI commits. So what are agents contributing to the code base and what's the risk posture of that? So if I double click into that, we can look at the commits over time, the violations in those commits, So again, what's the risk posture of those? What repositories are agents contributing to? And what's the, composition of vulnerabilities or flaws that agents are producing? And we can, again, dive a little bit deeper here to learn more about these repositories and look at, what are the policies and types of issues that agents are committing. So, this example, lot of uh, leakage of information in logger messages, some critical secrets, vulnerabilities found in dependencies, and again, we can kind of double click to start managing that. So I think that's the foundational. We need visibility into this. The next question is, okay, that's great. The the goal has always been how do we reduce risk? How do we I think your phrase is take a remediation first mindset. I don't want to steal your language.
That's okay.
But yeah, so how do we remediate? And then not only that, how do we not just manage the volume of code that's being generated by these agents and um, give developers and security teams tools to manage that? But ideally, how do we prevent it from continuing to happen and bring security context to agents? So that's kind of what we'll walk through right now. So here we can see, these are all the agent commit violations that in that repository. So we can see, details about this violation. We can see it's an agent commit. The kind of first step for Psycho's approach to any prioritization is our risk analysis. So our normalized risk score that applies to any violation, including agent commits. But I think the big challenge is agents are generating code quickly and it's a lot to analyze. So how do we give developers tools to triage and prioritize these? And one element of that is exploitability. So running AI exploitability analysis to say, not only is this a reachable CVE, but the runtime conditions, the infrastructure it's running on, the various ingredients for an attack to exploit this are present. And then, all right, can we actually generate remediation guidance, look at what's the upgrade effort to fix this issue. So this is interesting at like a one-off level, but I think what's really interesting is when instead of invoking these tools one at a time, we use AI to scale at scale, I guess. And so an example of that, if I look at all the violations in this repository, and maybe I just want to do an initial filtering by risk score, I can then go ahead and I can run exploitability analysis at scale on all these violations. We'll skip some that maybe have already been analyzed or that exploitability analysis isn't relevant for, but we can use that as a initial triage analysis point. I'll go in and I will look at a few examples that we've already analyzed. So if I click on violations that have been filtered by exploitability, click into exploitability analysis, we can see a verdict with a confidence score, as well as a summary analysis and evidence paths. So this is beneficial. I think often there's pushback or questions from developers of, is this a true positive and why? This gives some context for that. Again, we can generate remediation, similar for an SCA violation. We have, exploitability analysis. Same thing, not only is this reachable, but here are the ways an attacker would exploit this, again, with evidence paths and remediation, or what's the upgrade effort, what's a remediation plan. So I think it's interesting that this could not only be directions for a developer, but also for a coding agent to say, hey, here's a pretty good prompt for how you can go ahead and address this. So that's, leveraging AI to help manage the scale of these agent commits. But as mentioned before, ideally, we don't want to just keep managing the vulnerable output of agents. we would like to bring security context to them so that they make generate more secure code moving forward. So one of the ways we do that is by generating rules files that give agents exactly that, the context to write more secure code consistently. Quickly look at an example of that. So this is a prompt to look at that repository that we were just looking at, generate an AI rules file to prevent that risk in future commits. And if we look at the kind of plan for this, so it's going to profile the repository, query for agent commits, then do, code analysis, synthesize all of that analysis into the AI rules file, which can then be exported as a pull request to update the rules file. So I'll pause there. There is one more thing that I'm eager to show, but I just wanted to kind of get your perspective and reaction to some of that. What resonates, what doesn't. Yeah.
Well, this is very encouraging. Like you said, remediation first mindset is what we have to do, right? I mean, for years, I mean, I think we cornered the market in detection capabilities across the board, threat detection and response, vulnerability detection. We're detecting beyond instantly, right? We're pushing so hard to detect everything all the time, and giving folks and teams, 40 million more vulnerabilities they don't know what to do with isn't helping anyone, right? So some of the most encouraging aspects of what we just saw there were again, that remediation first mindset, where it's not just detecting something, it has a prioritizational funnel based on exploitability. So here are all the key factors that would make this a true risk to your system. And then the most important thing is, what are you going to do about it? Here's the recommended solutions, the pull requests that you can put in to remediate the vulnerability, and then how do we prevent it from happening again, right? How can we get into guardrails? Can we get into more proactive systems so that agents can learn at machine speed and only make this
Mhm.
mistake once and then never do it again? I think the way the visualizations present things is also of great benefit, right? People need to be able to consume this information quickly, roll it up into reports, take it to teams and show how we're improving, right? Nothing gains momentum like success and positive feedback and celebrating the
Mhm.
wins. So the more that you can see those visualizations easily saying this system is working, hearkening back to some of the things you said at the start, when we have a broken process that we're just doing faster now, right? Let's improve
Yeah.
that process so that as we get it to machine speed, it's working better, right? You can't automate something till you manually perfect it, and that's what these types of systems are helping you do. So I think between remediation first and gaining some traction and momentum with positive feedback and visualizations is huge.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think that's a good segue of, perfecting these systems manually before you automate. And, um, how do we not just improve a broken system, I guess? And that's something that's certainly top of mind for us. So there's something that I'm, very excited to share. And this is something that we recently launched, and it's our agentic workflow. So I'd say that everything that we've seen up to this point has been a human-driven process that's assisted by AI. So, I've been the one navigating the dashboards, filtering the violations, invoking exploitability analysis or remediation, prompting the agent to update the AI rules file. But with code generation being what it is and at the scale it is, even, agent or AI assisted processes that remain fundamentally human driven, I don't think are going to be able to keep pace. So I'll quickly go through the creation of an agentic workflow. So we have libraries to get people started, but we've had workflows for a while, we've had agents for a while. This is kind of logically marrying those two together. Every workflow has three elements. There's a trigger, condition, and filters. There are the actions and decisions, and then there are the controls in place to allow this to happen with trust. So, for example, if there's a violation status change. So there's a, critical CDE in a crown jewel application, and someone changes that from open to ignored. Normally, that would go into a queue. That exception proposal would go into a queue for human review. Can we truncate that by saying, okay, when this event happens, we're going to run exploitability analysis and see if does that corroborate the developers, ignoring this and say this is indeed not exploitable, and we recommend that you accept the exception, or does the exploitability analysis say no, in fact, this is actually exploitable. We're going to go ahead and we're going to reopen this with the evidence path, with the justification, and provide the developer with the context of why we're reopening this and maybe how to fix it. But for the sake of this, I'll just quickly go through what we call kind of an autonomous remediation workflow. So we'll say that it's for a SAST violation, we could select specific policies, but we're going to aim this at high risk violations. So these are the various filters that we have, but we'll say, I'm going to aim this at anything with a risk score greater than or equal to 90. Maybe I want to limit this to anything that's, internet exposed. So if I internet exposed, and maybe there's, I only want to have this in a crown jewel repository. Maybe there's a SciCode project, which is our grouping of assets, our kind of logical grouping of assets. So maybe it's this, business critical APIs. So I'm, focusing in this workflow primarily because, AI consumes tokens. And so how do we use those tokens efficiently? How do we give organizations the ability to be judicious with how they're using these agents? And then I will go ahead and I will select the exploitability agent. And here we see there are 4 possible outcomes or decisions from the exploitability analysis. Either, yes, it is exploitable, there's limited exploitability, it's not exploitable, or there's this kind of unknown. And this unknown is it's below the confidence threshold that we've set. So in order for the agent to have made a decision, it has to satisfy this confidence threshold. And we can, adjust this up and tune that as we see fit. But if it is deemed exploitable above that confidence threshold, we can go ahead and then generate a remediation. Again, similar, there are 2 possible outcomes. Either remediation is available above that confidence threshold, or it's not. If it is, we can open a fixed PR, and we can, require human review and approval. Going back, if it's not exploitable, we can update the status of this to ignored, and again, require human approval so that, these critical SAST findings and these crown jewel applications, we want to have human review and approval before these things just run autonomously. But this gives us, the ability, this triggers every time that event happens. So it doesn't require me to go in and invoke these tools. Instead, I have control over what runs autonomously, what requires my review, and that review is all in a single dashboard for me to take a look. So I know this is your first time taking a look at this, but what's your take on the appetite of customers and clients that you're talking with to adopt AI? What are the controls that they think they need in place to do so? What's your perspective?
Well, you mentioned it as you're providing the demo there, control and agency, right? So how much control do we have over this? How much control are we giving the agents and the autonomous workers? Right now, I think across the board, it's one of the cleanest 50-50 splits I've seen to technology hype cycles in a long time, right? There's organizations that are just diving right in. They're putting how much AI you've created or used in your daily work life as part of your performance metrics. They're tied to your bonuses. So they're pushing people to use AI and probably not equipping them properly. I think equipping someone properly with education and a safe space to play and learn and develop is probably the most important control. when it comes to AI security, right? So if you're going to say, listen, your performance and your bonus is based on how much AI you're using, equip them to use it properly. Otherwise, you're just going to create this massive internal attack surface that creates far too much risk versus the reward of, someone finally figuring out how to create a PowerPoint with AI, right? That's not really the gains that you're trying to accomplish here. So there's that one side of the fence where people are going at warp speed, before they've invented the wheel. And then on the other side, there's a lot of resistance to this, where they want a human in the loop entirely. They're terrified of the token costs, which it's not paranoia if they're out to get you, right? I mean, there
Yep.
are extreme costs to this that you have to be very cognizant of. So I think that's created this huge dichotomy of the 50-50 split. So yes, the other side of the fence, I see organizations putting a great deal of caution in this space, worried about token costs, putting humans in the loop everywhere, and just choosing a very small subset of either development or end user usage where AI will be applicable.
Yeah. So what's your kind of, when you're speaking with clients, how do you guide them through that? If their incentives are tied to AI usage, how do you say, okay, hold on, these are the things that you need to make that possible? And conversely, if they require these controls, but maybe there are capabilities that they're not able to employ or adopt, how do you help them navigate that?
Well, it starts by expectation setting, right? We
Hmm.
have to set realistic expectations and goals. This isn't something that, as much hype as there around the speed at which this is happening, you can't expect people within a reasonable organizational change model to adopt it this quickly and become proficient at it this quickly. So, first part of the conversation is, right, like let's buckle up and let's think of this in 6 and in 12 month chunks and create a 3-year roadmap of realistically maximizing AI usage. Simply because you're also trying to hit a moving target, right? The AI world, even the terms are happening so fast. Everything was agent to agent, RAG, and then all of a sudden, none of that mattered, and it was all about MCP servers, and right now it's all about MCP servers, and that's all going to change. And so I think we have to be realistic with how quickly everything's changing on how well we can be proficient in something that's always changing, right?
Yeah.
So we have that realistic conversation with folks. Then we provide the training area and the safe space to figure out what they're going to use. Let's properly define which models we're going to pick to accomplish which goals, right? Let's make sure that we have the right guardrails in place in the lower environments so that we're training this properly. And then we're going to lean on our partners and our vendors because we have this fantastic industry in cybersecurity that is very reactive to market needs and technology needs. And we need to lean on that industry to help educate us and get us up to speed on where we need to go. And then I think the last part of it is you need to put some investment into compensating controls. Again, thinking with that remediation first mindset. Every day can't be Patch Tuesday. Every day can't be 10,000 zero days. What are the compensating controls, whether they be architectural, firewall, web application, firewall, etc., to allow us to get our feet under us in this space and move forward effectively. I would say those are probably the biggest conversations I have on a regular basis.
Yeah, all really, really great advice. You mentioned kind of the whiplash. Things are changing quickly. Things that were relevant a few months ago aren't relevant now. I'm going to ask you the hard and maybe unfair question of, looking forward next 12 months from now, what does that, remediation first uh, reality look like within agentic development?
So the way I see it is it is going to be the race between kind of the red attacking side and the blue defending side. And I think right now the attackers did get a jump on us. I think they're going to be leaning into this faster than the business can because there's no risk to them. They're not going to bring down mission critical systems by doing something and inadvertently trying to lean into AI. They're attacking, they're trying to break things, right? And when you have a system that's variable, uncontrollable, unpredictable. It's great for breaking things. It's literally designed to do what they want it to do. So I think that's the first part of the scary aspect of it all. I think the key though is I do feel the blue side will have a chance to catch up as we're leveraging AI to learn effectively as well. So I think there's going to be uh, more port attacks, and we're going to see a lot of discovery in the next 6 to 12 months. I think we also need to remind everyone that material disclosures, cyber insurance claims, those take time to
Mm.
funnel and file through the system. So as we're collecting data on what's actually happening, we have to give a chance for the data to accumulate before you can use it to weigh in on a decision, right? How many material breaches have had cyber insurance claims on it made in the last 6 months? Well, you got to wait 6 months, right, to get 6 months worth of data to say that. So a lot of us are speaking with, gut feelings, conjecture based on
Mm.
experience, but I think that data is going to come out and it's going to be really interesting. And again, we're all just going to leverage the pace at which agentic workflows can learn, right? So that's going
Yeah.
to help the defenders as well build autonomous systems to defend against the attackers, right? It kind of goes back and forth, but it's always been a race between the red and the blue
Yeah.
side. For a little bit, red's ahead, blue comes back, right? And
Yeah.
around and around we go. So yeah, I think those are some of the things that when you look into the crystal ball, you're going to see. I don't think the light at the end of the tunnel is a train, so I think there's hope.
Okay.
And I think it'll work out for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Always the pendulum swing, always a process to keep things in balance. But really thank you, Jeff, so much for joining. I really appreciate having you on with us. For those in the audience who want to explore more, have a conversation about this, please reach out, schedule time to connect with the team. And yeah, I'll just say thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.